All right, you're meeting with a potential future client. Do you talk about price at the beginning of the meeting or at the end of the meeting? I tell you what, you do not want to be talking about it at the beginning of the meeting, and that is because price is elastic, value is relative, which is why my business partner, John Englezos, who is our chief B2B funnel strategist, has prepared this video on the psychology of pricing.
The point behind the psychology of pricing is this. I mean, we have our price points, and I'm going to ask you this question, right? How often do your prospects ask you for a discount? Let me know in the chat. Like, how often do your prospects ask you for a discount? Now, we have a rule here. No more discounting, no discounting. But how often do your prospects, touch that nerve and ask you for a discount? Now, Fiona says hardly ever these days. That's really good. I guess Fiona perhaps has probably implemented some of the stuff that we're talking about. Doug or Natalie says not very often. Naomi says, I haven't been asked since I introduced the 3 packages, something I'm going to be talking about today, which is really awesome. Rafi says smaller clients tend to more than larger ones. Larger clients for Craig, so on the flip side. Lisa says mostly they want to change the scope. John says not too often. Cameron says they sometimes struggle with the price. Yeah, so all of these things are pricing-based objections, right? And essentially, if we can better understand the psychology of pricing and how to use certain elements in our sales process, we are less likely to come up against these types of issues where people either struggle to justify the investment or struggle to swallow the size of the price, where they start to compare you to others that might be cheaper, where they start asking you for a discount. Catherine says, yeah, I had one client who just kept trying. So, the reality is that this often happens because we haven't used some of these, some of these strategies that I'm about to introduce you to today. So with that out of the way, what this call is really about is how to sell your price point. So it's about harnessing the psychology of pricing, overcoming price-based objections so that you never have to discount again. As I said, we have a rule, no discounting, no more discounting. And so that's what I want to address today. And it starts by understanding 5 really important pricing principles. And so this is where we're going to begin. Now, the first thing here, and the first, psychological element that you want to harness is being able to truly understand the prospect that you're working with. And in my world, that comes down to really understanding their goals. See, when we just get asked for proposals, and this is another thing that happens often. Oh, can I just have a proposal? Someone sends a proposal, they look at the back page, they decide if you're too expensive or if you're in the Goldilocks zone, right? If you want to avoid a lot of that, it really starts by understanding their goals and really mapping out where they want to be. In every call that I have with someone, before I get into a pricing scenario, I'm understanding their goals for a very good reason. If I know where they want to get to, then I can use that goal to set the scene and obviously justify the fact that the expense on me or the investment on me is down here versus the outcome that they want to get to, which is way up here. When someone says to me that they want to make an extra $500,000 in the next 12 months, right? That's really important for me to know, because then I can use that in framing against my investment, which might be $9,600. So if you could invest $9,600 to make an extra $500,000, hands up, would you do it? See, if you don't know that goal, you can never make that claim. If you don't know where they want to get to, you can never make that claim. So the first thing I like to do is understand their goals, map out their goals, really know where they want to be. You're going to use that to frame your price later. If you know where they want to get to, you can frame your investment as being way down here versus, the outcome that they stand to gain. And that's really important. That's principle number 1, map out their goals. Number 2, frame their no-brainer return on investment. Well, you've now got that goal, right? But what I then like to do as a next step is work out, okay, if your goal is to get 10 clients and that was an extra $100,000, let's say, then that obviously means that it's $10,000 a client. I might ask someone, what's the profit you make in a deal? If you were to close one new client today, and maybe they'll say the profit is $7,500. With that information, what do you think I can do if my investment is $10,000, for instance? I can say, great. So if all I'm able to do is bring you 2 new clients, what's the result going to be, Mr. Prospect? And Mr. or Mrs. Prospect says, oh, well, it's going to be $15,000 in profit, right? For a $10,000 investment. Now, what if we embed those principles and you get 3 clients every single month? What's your payoff in a year? They suddenly go like this. Oh, wow, that's pretty bloody good. So the second principle here is to understand or frame their no-brainer return on investment. What do they stand to gain, right? So in my world, I'm obviously helping people get clients. So what do they stand to gain out of that? Just to use an example of someone that's completely different in the group, John Hutchcroft, he sells LED lighting systems. What they stand to gain versus the investment is all this payback in energy savings. And from my conversations with him, it's like thousands upon thousands, right? So it's framing their no-brainer return on investment versus your dollar figure. So the first thing was to map out their goals, because you need to know where they want to get to, and you want to make sure that you're making a claim and a statement that you're going to help them get there with your investment. The second thing is really understand the no-brainer ROI. So for me, I'm always going to, what's the value of one client? What's the profit margin for you? And if it works out that, like I said, $7,500 times 2 is $15,000, one investment in my program at $9,600, if you only got 2 clients, you get $15,000. You net positive $5,000 if you only got 2 clients. Imagine if you got 2 clients every month. What would that do to you? So the second thing there, frame the no-brainer return on investment. The third thing is really about finding their reality box. And this is before you throw out any price point, because what you want to do is understand what type of dollar figure is reality in their world. If you know what that looks like, then you can offer a product or a service at a price point that is beneath their reality box. In their mind, they've actually tricked themselves into thinking they're saving money. See, I might ask this question. I might say to you, so right now, when it comes to generating leads, or when it comes to this goal, so let's say the goal was $500,000 in revenue, right? Help me understand what's in your reality. Is it within your reality to invest $30,000? Someone will say no. Say, great, that's good, that's good. Is it within your reality to invest $20,000? They might say, we're getting a bit closer, but that might be a bit tight, and say, great. Is it within your reality to invest $15,000? Now, if someone then says yes, I'll say, great. Here's my reality. I don't plan on charging you $15,000. In fact, I don't plan on charging you 12. I don't plan on charging you 11. I don't plan on charging you 10. Spoiler alert, that's anchor pricing. We're going to get there. $9,600 is the investment. So now that we've established it's within your reality, and now that we've established it's going to help you get to the goal, can we sign up? So that's the reality box question, right? And Chris, I'll come back and I'll address your question at the end of this, because there's certainly some ways that will help you. And I think Naomi's started to nail that, right? But that's the reality box question. Start big, come down, because what you want to do, and if you've done things right, you're not black art quoting, and you've got your productization in place, you can offer something for them at a price point that is beneath what's in their reality. And of course, very rarely I have someone that says to me, John, $500 isn't within my reality. And I say, that's okay. Well, I've got a payment plan on a program, which is a do-it-yourself, and it's $97. Can you make that work? Or whatever else it might be. So finding their reality is about making sure you got a price point that fits in. It's also about making sure you're not pitching something to someone that's just going to be a total slog. If someone simply can't spend $30,000, you don't want to go in with a $30,000 pitch. So we were mapping out their goals. We're understanding their no-brainer ROI. We're finding their reality. 4, quote your price point more casually. This is something that I've been doing for a while that I didn't realize was a thing. And I want to shout out to a guy named Marcos Rivera. I watched a webinar from him the other day. He is like the pricing guru. He's someone we're working with at the moment. And something he said was that he said it came down to the syllables and the price, but I like to think of it as pricing it more casually. What feels bigger, right? What feels like a bigger, more expensive investment? $1,250 or $12.50? Same number, right? But $12.50 does not feel as expensive as $1,250. Now, what he was talking about was making the number smaller, and sometimes making the number smaller allows you to go bigger, right? Bring it down to price it up. So $1,250 versus $1,250. And I didn't realize that I'd been doing this for so long. I don't say $9,600 is the price of the program, or $997 is the price of the program. I say it's $997. I say it's $9,600. It's $4,800, right? This thing apparently is just unreal for many, many people when it comes to throwing out a dollar figure, especially as the dollar figure gets bigger. So quote your price point more casually. Davey says, if they ask if it's $12.50, they are not a Goldilocks client. Let me tell you, if they ask if it's $12.50, I'd be wondering how they filtered through your diagnostic. Because yes, you know, naturally, if they ask if it's $12.50, yeah, they're probably not a Goldilocks client. And that's okay. You know, if you happen to have that scenario in the pile, like those headphones I recently threw away. So $1,250 versus $12.50. Quote your price point more casually. Maybe says maybe they thought it was just their lucky day. Who knows? What a massive discount, right? So that's the fourth thing. And the fifth thing, and I kind of already just brought this up, is you want to use anchor pricing and reverse anchoring. Now, for those who aren't familiar with what anchor pricing is about using bigger numbers and sometimes even smaller numbers to frame the investment point that you want to be at. So let me give you a good example of this. And this is a real life example, I kid you not. This was probably about 18 months ago. So you'll be able to know that because my daughter's 1, and 18 months ago I could make these type of spending decisions, and now I can't. But 18 months ago, you know, my wife and I were walking around the city, and there was a Gucci store, and so we walk in the Gucci store because she saw something in the window, and you know, we get in there, and as you're walking through the Gucci store, you know, you're thinking about that thing in the window, and you're just seeing all these really expensive products up the front, right? You get to the shop attendant says, "How can I help you?" And you say, "How much is that jacket in the window?" And what they do is they bring you 2 jackets. They bring you that jacket and they say, "Well, that jacket, sir, is $12,500. And I go, $12,500? I'm not spending $12,500 on a jacket. And then they say, "But we've got this one, which is very, very similar. In fact, it's the same thing. It was just made in this factory and not that factory. It's the same leather, blah, 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 for $12.50. How do you feel about the $12.50 having just heard the $12,000? Doesn't feel so expensive anymore. But if I walked in and it was immediately $12.50, you know, it'd become expensive. You know who else is really good at anchor pricing? Costco. So if you've ever been to a Costco store, pay attention next time you go. Do you know what they have at the front of the Costco store? They have the $5,000 TVs. They have aftermarket Rolex watches at the front of a Costco store. It's a grocery store. Why do you think they do that? Because when you've seen the big numbers, buying bulk in the other things where they make a massive spread, you justify the expense. It no longer feels so expensive, right? Everything seems cheaper after that, Fiona said. That's anchor pricing. So that is anchor pricing, right? Whereas reverse anchoring is on the flip side, right? Reverse anchoring is about saying, you could spend this, but if you just spent this much more, the outcome is 5-fold. So that's reverse anchoring. So anchor pricing is using bigger numbers to make your numbers easier to swallow. And reverse anchoring is using slightly smaller numbers to prop up your number and prove that your number is much more valuable. Now, 2.0 strategy on this, as some people already are probably exercising if they've been doing our stuff for quite some time, is what we call 3-tiered pricing. And that is the patsy, the preferred, and the premium. The point of having the patsy, the preferred, the premium is that we've all got our preferred packages. In my case, it might be that $4,800 point. The point of having the premium is to have something that's wildly more expensive that even kind of seems mildly unnecessary. Like, you know, we've got a premium product that is worth $10,000 a month where someone is in weekly calls with me. Honestly, it's unnecessary. Look at what we give you, right? At the other level, it's unnecessary. Someone could buy it. They get great value having me in their corner for 10 grand a month, but it's not necessary. That there is to make 4,800 feel easier to swallow. And then I've got a version of the 4,800. Guess what? That's $3,200. That is half the features. It's half the features, half the outcomes. So you say to yourself, well, for only an extra, I mean, I'm really bad at maths, but 32 to 48, what are we talking about? $1,600, something like that. It's not that much more expensive to get this amazing thing in the middle. So if you're also thinking about, and some people call this Goldilocks pricing, 3 options, you know, it's like too much, too little, just right. We call it 3-tiered pricing, at least that's what I call it. That's something that you can institute in conjunction with anchor pricing and reverse anchoring. So that's something that's really important too. So anchor pricing and reverse anchoring. Those are the 5 main psychological principles that I'm using in almost every single pitch. So number 1, it was mapping out their goals, because if I know the long play, if I know where they want to get to, I can justify my investment as the starting point towards getting there. I frame the no-brainer return on investment because if I can quantify a small result as getting them ROI, they're going to feel amazing when they get a much bigger result, but it's going to help them understand that they stand more to gain than to lose by investing. If I find their reality box, I can introduce a product from the suite that's in line with what they would spend, right? Because I've asked them, what's in your reality? I quote my price point much more casually. I don't go for $1,250. I don't go for $9,600. I go for $9,600. It's much more casual. It's easier to digest. And then finally, I always use anchoring and reverse anchoring. And if you have 3 price points, so you've got your Goldilocks, too much, too little, just right, you're going to push people into the just right. So those are the 5 principles. I've seen James just come off mute. Did you do that accidentally or on purpose?
I'm coming back. I'm listening. I've got thoughts, I've got ideas, and I'm looking forward to facilitating the discussion. So, okay, but how do you overcome price-based objections? Tell us, John.
So that's what's next. Price-based objections, because the reality is you will sometimes cop these types of things. You will sometimes cop these objections. So at this point, someone says to me, what are the typical price-based objections and how can I overcome them? So one of them, right, and this is perhaps the most ridiculous, is, yeah, but ABC company is cheaper than you, right? They're cheaper than you. What I do is I like to reduce the ridiculous. Now, for someone to typically get that far in the pitch, they're interested in what it is that I'm talking about. They're actually fairly interested in working with me, but this is just a delay tactic and a negotiation tactic to try and bring your price down. They won't often ask for the discount, but they'll say, oh, but this is more cost effective or this is cheaper. What I like to do is I reduce the ridiculous. And what that means, and I picked it up from a 1980s book by Tom Hopkins, right? Can't remember what it's called, pretty green cover. I think it's How to Master the Art of Selling. It's the only 1980s tactic that I use is this reduce the ridiculous. And it works like this. If someone is, for instance, $600 more expensive than me, and I'm about to get out my calculator to help us do this. If someone was $600 a month less expensive than me, what I do is this. I say, great. So the divide is how much? It's $600. So here are their outcomes. Here are the outcomes that I'm promising. The difference between the two is $600. Let's work that back. $600. Well, let's divide that by 30 days. $600 divided by 30 days. And I often ask the prospect is how much? And they'll say, oh, I don't know. You've got the calculator. And I'll say, you know how much it is? It is less than the price. It is less than the cost of lunch. It is $20. Are you telling me that for less than the price of 3 coffees and an avocado on toast, that you'd be willing to throw away all of these extra outcomes? And I go quiet. And what do you think they do? They start thinking. I think, shit, the difference is really an avocado on toast and 2 coffees. Am I really willing to throw away all these extra awesome outcomes for the price of avocado on toast and 2 coffees? That's reducing the ridiculous, right? Because $600 a month might sound like a lot, but it's not when you break it down. It's $20 a day. So when someone says to you, ABC is cheaper, find out about the offer, find out the price difference, but reduce the ridiculous. Like if it's over a year, it works even better if it's over a year. So sometimes I like to look at it and say, over the year, it's going to be, $7,200 more expensive. Let's break that down per month. Let's break that down per week. Let's break that down per day. And then I'll throw in that type of example. Hey, what we're talking about here is a few coffees in a bougie coffee shop. That's the difference. Can you go without those coffees to get this type of outcome? So that's reducing the ridiculous. Another one here, when someone just doesn't pull the trigger and they're saying, look, I want to invest in it, but the price is here or the price is there and I don't know if I'm going to make it work. I harness the power of COI. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, and that's cost of inaction. And so I'll bring it back down. I'll slow the pace, and I'll say, great. So I understand right now that where you're at today, this is a stretch for you. So let me ask you this question. If your business was to stay exactly the same, be in the exact same position today as it is in 6 months' time, how confident would you feel about the future of that business? And they stop. I say, how happy will you be running that type of business? And I'm trying to basically get into their mind and help them understand that there are losses by not taking action, and that a investment today is about not just meeting a result, but stopping this decline that your business is on, right? So COI is about forward projecting and having them understand that they stand to lose a lot more than they think by not pulling the trigger today. Because if you need to fix your business and you stop, where are you going to be in 6 months? Many businesses fail. So that's COI. The next thing here is Home Depot, bringing father time into the equation. What do I mean by that? We all know the DIYers, right? The people that say, oh, but and I had this objection the other day. Like someone literally said to me, yeah, but John, it doesn't cost me anything to try and work it out myself. So what do you think I did? Well, I brought father time into the equation, and we worked out that they were spending copious amounts of time on lead generation and prospecting, and they were spending a lot of money on ads, and they weren't getting it right. In their mind, that was free. And then I asked them a pretty upfront and maybe slightly rude question, and that was, "Hey, Mrs. Prospect, Mr. Prospect, what do you pay yourself per hour?" And they immediately went, "What?" And I said, "Don't worry, I'm not looking for the answer, but I want you to think of that number. Put that number in your head right now. You just told me you currently spend about 15 or 20 hours a month trying to get this stuff right, and you still can't get it right, and you're willing to explore to try and get it right. That's what you're telling me, yeah? Yeah. Now I want you to do some maths for me. 20 times the number that's in your head, what does that equal? Do you know what they often say? It equals more than what I was about to invest in you to get it right. So for the people who say, oh, but and I had this just literally a couple of days ago, and this call is going to decision call next week because I made that statement. It's going to decision call because I made that statement. How much time are you wasting trying to muck around with this stuff? And this person is potentially going to invest in our $9,600 product. Brilliant, right? Had I been, had I not wanted to push that envelope, I probably would have stopped and said, oh, yeah, I understand that. Oh, we'll go have a crack at it and see, if you don't get it right. No, instead I pushed the point. And the point was, you already spend this amount of time trying to work this out. But you cost the business money. What does that actually look like? And it worked out to be more expensive than the investment, $9,600 to get it right. So bring father time into the equation. And the last thing here, I couldn't find an image of two anchors. So I found an image of two anchors. And this is the morning show, and in New South Wales at least. And double down on your anchoring. Sometimes if people can't make the right decision, it comes down to the fact that you haven't really anchored things properly. And sometimes it's good to not just anchor with your own 3-tiered pricing, but anchor against someone else. So, there is an agency, and I'm not going to name names, but, they've got a product which is similar to ours. The price point is way more expensive. And, it's not that we're cheap. We're not cheap. I think we're appropriately priced. I use that as part of my anchoring. I also anchor against other people's products on reverse anchoring. Hey, you could go and do this and it's going to cost you that amount per month. It seems reasonable, but this is the difference between what we've got here and what we've got there. So sometimes you need to really push that anchoring. So double down on your anchoring. There's my two anchors. Double down on your anchoring. And that's it. So the 4 objections, just really quickly. If it's pricing based and it's the difference between you and someone else, reduce the ridiculous. If it's about the fact that they're just too afraid to pull the trigger and they're too afraid to spend the money, harness the power of COI. If they're the DIYer, if they're the Home Depot or the Bunnings person, bring father time into the equation. And finally, double down on anchoring. I can't stress this enough. Anchor pricing is probably my number one closing tactic. And it's probably the best thing that I can try out in my suite. So pricing psychology, just to finish this off. Sorry, James. I know you're
I'm
chomping.
laughing too hard at the last slide.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I tried to find the one where Carl Stefanovi got really drunk, but it was too low def to throw on the slide. But so to summarize this, and I stole this from my friend Marcos, pricing psychology is about framing value to increase confidence and influence behavior. All these things that I just thrown out: frame value, increase confidence, influence behavior, and that is it. Q&A time, and then to James.
That's an important finish one. Could you go back to the last slide? That was the one before. Pricing psychology is about framing value to increase confidence, because at the end of the day, it's not you that it's making the decision to work with you. At the end of the day, it's the client. And you can't pressure or bully somebody into buying your product and service. And if you do, it gets pretty uncomfortable pretty quickly, because they might not be entirely certain about what they bought, or they're not really, comfortable in the position that they're in. But if they've got the confidence and they're going into it with confidence, sure that there's going to be a little bit of post-purchase dissonance, and we need to demonstrate value as quickly as possible to reinforce the confidence that they had when they came into your world. But it's about increasing that confidence. Okay, if you would like some help structuring your meetings to control the conversation, to get your future customers and clients on the same page, to get you to the outcome that you are seeking, find the link below this video to get hold of John's one call close formula for B2B sales. All right, check out the link that's somewhere around this video, the one call close formula for B2B sales. You are gonna love it.